All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. It's great to see everybody. Thank you all for coming. My name is Bianca Daswani, and I am currently serving as the Administrative Fellow for the Harris Center for Mental Health and IDD. I also serve on the ACHE's SETC's Mentorship Committee. I would like to welcome you all to today's session. And so this is definitely one of our first, panel discussions for the Mentorship Committee. So we are super excited to introduce all of our esteemed speakers for today. We wanted to thank our chapter strategic partners for their support in this program and our other educational events, our charter member sponsors, Texas Children's Hospital, Houston Methodist, St. Luke's Health, Memorial Hermann Health System, MD Anderson Cancer Center, and HCA Houston Healthcare. Our Diamond Plus sponsors, Metastar and the Intercontinental Houston Medical Center. Our Diamond sponsors, UTMB Health. Our Platinum sponsors, Harris Health, HKS, Kindred Healthcare, Legacy Community Health, Lean Toss, Luminaire, Page, Reality Trust Group, the Cinderelli Company, Texas A&M University, the Texas Women's University, University of Houston Clear Lake, and EEBP, as well as our silver sponsors, Berkeley Research Group, Brazo Sports College, Kendeo Partners, EYP, and the UT School of Public Health. Please note we have several upcoming exciting events of interest, all of which you can register for at ache-sectc.org. Registration is open for a number of these events. So join, let's see, we have formed a team for the Heart Walk on Saturday, November 19th. So this Saturday, so join, donate, help save lives. Registration is open for the fourth quarter breakfast meeting on Thursday, December 1st at the Intercontinental Houston Medical Center and broadcast via Zoom. We also have the former director of the CIA's Counterintelligence Office in Russia, James Olson. Mr. Olson has some amazing stories of his time in the CIA, so don't miss a real-life American hero. We have several volunteer events scheduled for December. Two on December 3rd and one on December 17th. We're also planning a December Cookies for the Chief and a joint event with MGMA, so keep in the know. Some of these events have limited spots, so don't delay and register today. Stay tuned for additional event announcements, as many of them are currently in development. Please join our mailing list, LinkedIn group, and our brand new Instagram to keep in touch with upcoming news. All right, so I will now kind of just begin our the power of mentorship from the eyes of mentees and mentors. So today on our panel, if everybody can kind of introduce themselves, that would be great. So my first question to you all is please, briefly introduce yourselves to the audience. We'll start with Trudy.
Good afternoon. I am Trudy Leidig. I am the Vice President for Clinical Transformation and Quality at the Harris Center for Mental Health and IDD.
Don Wagner here. I am no longer on a payroll. My background is physical therapy and then hospital administration for many years, both in the Air Force and here in the Houston community.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Charles Pulliam, and I am the CEO and senior partner of Solutions, which is a workforce performance company.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Long, and I'm the Department Administrator for Patient Care for the Children's Cancer Hospital of MD Anderson.
Hi, I'm Sandra Tyson. I am currently a professor at Texas Women's University in the Healthcare Administration program, but prior to going into academia full-time, I was employed with UT Health Science Center from 2005 to 2017. The last 5 years, I was executive director for healthcare transformation initiatives, where I led the implementation of over 40 healthcare transformation projects, about half of them through the Texas Medicaid 1115 waiver and the other half through the Texas Medicaid Network Access Improvement Program. I also have done a short stint with Harris County Public Health, where I conducted a community health improvement plan, developed did the community health needs assessment prior to that, developed the plan and everything in order for them to get their accreditation. About the time I was doing that is when I started teaching part-time at Texas Women, and then I transitioned into my current full-time role.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Don Gibson. I'm the President Senior Partner of Quantum Leadership, and we are a consulting, coaching, mentoring, and educational company.
Dr. Shahani, if you want to introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lokesh Shahani. I'm the Chief Medical Officer for the UT Health Behavioral Sciences campus. The reason we call it the campus now is because we have 2 hospital buildings. One is the UT Health Harris County Psychiatry Center, and then our new 6-month-old baby, the Johnston Behavioral Sciences Center.
Thank you. So this question is for Don Gibson, Don Wagner, and Kevin. What do you believe constitutes an effective mentorship? Kevin, we'll start with you.
All right, thank you very much. So for me, an effective mentorship, there's a lot of research out there on what mentorship and how to be an effective mentor. And I'll leave that for you to research on your own. But for me, just from personal experience, I think honesty with your mentor, between your mentor and your mentee, is the most effective way that you can go about it. Many times what you'll find is people will come to you for a variety of reasons, and making sure that you have an honest and open relationship with that person is a good way to ensure that you stay on the right track. I have had mentees come to me for reasons other than true mentorship, and having to take time to root that out and understand what they're really after. Sometimes it's therapy, to be completely honest with you. And I am not a therapist. I want to help them find that correct path for their success and their future. So being honest with them, not just telling them what they want to hear, not just taking things on their grounds and letting them set the rules, but understanding, if you're a mentee, understanding what you want from your mentor is incredibly important. And if you're a mentor, understanding how to best help your mentee and be honest with them about that and keep that relationship open is something that I've had to learn the hard way in my mentorship career.
The details have been quite well covered there, Don Wagner here. I would add to it a clarity of roles, that both the mentor and the mentee understand what their role should be in this relationship, and that the mentor should be totally attentive to aspirations of the mentee and be able to respond to that in some helpful, and I would also say fine-tuning, corrective role if that would be necessary. The other things already commented, I would totally agree with.
May I add something? My colleague behind me, who's actually, they're both logged in, she created a JOT form to get to the root initially of what is needed or expected when it comes to the mentor mentee, and it really has helped to get to the root of the problem very fast. Sometimes the mentor, while we are not therapists, as you said, we do have the capability to direct them in the right direction and not just leave them hanging. And I feel that the JOT form that she created has been able to smooth line that.
Thank you for that feedback. Don Gibson?
I would add to what has already been said that and reinforce the fact that relationship is extremely important because mentoring relationship is the driver here. That it's important that both parties, as Don Wagner said, clarify their expectations because the mentor needs to know what the protege or mentee is expecting, and of course, what the mentor expects. So if you're a protege, you need to let the mentor know what you're hoping to get out of the mentorship. So for example, if you're looking for advice on moving up within your career organization or being a better manager, let your mentor know your specific goals. And as a protege, you need to ask your mentor what he or she is expecting from the relationship. It may be that the mentor just wants to give back since they benefit from a mentorship, or they may have something in mind that you can help them with. It's important that mentor and the protege are well prepared before a meeting. They should have an agenda in advance. It's very important that they have exactly both persons' time in their best interest, not waste it. I think that the protege needs to always be mindful and respectful of the mentor's time when they schedule meetings. And, you know, and that goes both ways. The mentor should be respectful of the mentee as well. The other thing that I've found from experience is that proteges are quick to sometimes ask too much too soon from a mentor. The focus of the first few meetings is to really build that rapport, that bond, and then the protege can ask questions for the answers that they're looking for a little bit later. And one other thing is to make sure that you keep your mentor informed. If there's changes in your life or in your workplace, let them know about it because they may have to shift gears. Make sure you go in with questions that you have. I think mentor appreciates when it appears that the protege is well prepared and they've thought through the questions before they ask them. And that's pretty much it for what I can think of right now.
I'd like to jump in with one other thought. This has been implied but not explicitly stated. The mentee needs to be prepared to drive the agenda, to come with what the discussion, and a mentee should be prepared to do that.
A mentee should definitely be able to drive the discussion. I agree, just so that people can get more out of it. Now, my next question is for everybody. What significant mentorship experiences have you had that shaped your own life?
Yeah, I'll jump out there and start. And again, this is Charles Pulliam, and thank you for the question, and thank you everyone for spending some time with us today. One of the things that I like to mention as it relates to my own personal experience is that I found it very valuable to have multiple mentors for multiple facets of my life. And so someone mentioned earlier about not being a therapist, but sometimes you need one. And so if you have someone in your life that is able to do that from a mentor perspective, well, then it's good. And so most notable for me is I have a mentor. His name is Gary, and he's more personal, although he's walked with me through every aspect of my life, basically, career and family and all of that. But he's more of a personal mentor. He is over 80 years old, and he will always tell me the truth and shoot straight with me, doesn't judge, and is an excellent coach more than anything, and encourager. And then I have several people in my life that are professional mentors that know more about who I am professionally, and they're more engaged with me that way.
I'll jump in next. I mean, For me, I think a lot of my mentoring comes from just mirroring what our mentors do. I think I've learned a lot about how to compose myself in a professional demeanor, how to be, speaking with people in a professional demeanor, replying to emails. It's a big deal in your professional lives on how you reply to emails in a much more gentle fashion. So kind of learning those soft skills has been a great part in me professionally developing, and I kind of owe that to my mentors.
I'll
Let me
go
jump-
next. I would have to say the first significant mentor that I had in my life was over 30 years ago, back before I ever even went into healthcare. And it was somebody that I met during my previous career. I like to say I've had more than one life on this earth. But I used to be employed, had a pretty nice career with Exxon. And I met somebody through that saw me in a way I hadn't seen myself. At that point, I had not finished my degree. I had not gotten any graduate degrees. And this person saw me in that light, and they put that mirror up. And for the first time, I saw myself as an educated person. I saw myself as a person in that kind of a role. And that is what drove me to say, I can do that. I can see it now, so I can do it. So it's important, I think, for mentors to be able to put that mirror up, not just in the ways where you're maybe doing it in a corrective way or whatever, but in a way that shows that person their streaks and all those good things that they bring to the table, so that they can see themselves in the role that you're trying to prepare them for.
I might add that I think most of us have experienced the earliest mentoring is from our parents. And my parents encouraged my brother and sister and all of us that we should be always striving to be the person of integrity. And also that they told us that our character is who we are when nobody's looking. And I always remembered that. I was also fortunate to have, during the early stages of my career in healthcare, was the benefit of a cardiovascular surgeon. He was the chief of medical affairs, and he taught me a lot about how to work with physicians, and that made my role as vice president of physician relations a lot easier because creating that bond with physicians can be a challenge sometimes. And I ended up serving as a liaison between the CEO and the medical staff because there were many hostile moments between the two. And fortunately, we were able to work those out. But I think that anytime you have an opportunity to get a mentor, you need to definitely take advantage of it.
May I say something? So for 15 years, I worked for the Army in burn wound care, mostly stationed at BAMC, well, it's SAMC now in the ISR. And one of the most important people that really resonated to me was not only my mentor, but the patient himself. Being able to speak from a different perspective really helped open my eyes. And so when I moved from the Army life of burn wound care, I went to Shriners, and that's where I found another mentor. So it really just depends on where you're at. And then this role at Brazosport College, the 3 mentors that we have here, I found have, including myself, we have a kind of a different role as far as there's specific career goal mentors, and then there's a mentor to keep you going, because as you said, it should start from early childhood with your parents. However, some people didn't have parents or came from a different demographic. I myself, my parents' goal was to get myself and my two sisters graduated through high school without getting pregnant. And that's as far as anybody ever spoke with me about education. However, when I started working with the Army, that's when other people started to speak to me about hiring my education, about elevating it and becoming the first in my family. So it really just depends, because it doesn't always start. And even when they come to school and they're the first generation like myself, there's a lot of, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I have time. A lot of people from different demographics also help their family. So there are many important people that sometimes aren't considered mentors, and they should be.
That's an excellent point that you make, and I'm glad you brought up the military. My colleagues here on the panel, we discussed this last week about the fact that the military really has this idea of mentorship really together, and actually they're probably the best at it. There's not a single military person that doesn't have a mentor somewhere in their line or in their view, and it's really good. The other side of that, the downside of it is oftentimes those mentors are assigned. And I find that is less effective than you being able to select your own mentor. But at the end of the day, it still works, and the process works really well within the military.
I'll jump in here. I think that, also we had talked last week about the military and the mentorship, that they have a really formal structure of mentorship. But I would comment, because, when you have the luxury of looking back on a rather long career, you will know that there were both formal and informal mentors along the way. Those you didn't anticipate being a mentor, but through the years, they were the ones you always went back to, and the personal mentors. And I can think, particularly as I've grown through leadership, I had a mentor that was both personal and professional, who was several years ahead of me in growth and would help me through those areas of promotion, and also through raising our kids. And her kids were a couple years ahead of mine, and just the advice and mentorship that started professionally but continued personally was hugely valuable in forming who I was as a leader. So, always remembering to look back on the history and who brought you there.
I would like to say to Dr. Tyson, our mentoring background is so eerily similar, and I've never met you, but it's incredible. Because when you started talking about your first mentoring relationship, it's very similar to my story. The concept of mentoring was not something that I was accustomed to early in my career. And so I'm glad everyone who is an early careerist on this call is being exposed to the wisdom of my colleagues on this panel, so that you can take advantage of this, because mentoring literally changed my life. It is the reason that I'm so passionate about it today. The very first person who I asked to be my mentor, I felt like such an idiot because I didn't know how to go about it. But I had seen this person's team, and every time I walked through this person's department, the team was happy, their customers were happy, the team worked well together, and I thought, my team doesn't look like that. I want my team to look like that. And so I called this guy, and some of you may know him because he is an executive with Memorial Hermann today. His name is Kyle Price, and I'm not ashamed to say that name, although if you know him, maybe you're ashamed for me to say that name. I don't know. Anyway, Kyle Price was my very first mentor, and he mentored me for 7 years. That's how tore up I was as an individual, as a leader, or how stupid I am, I'm not sure. But anyway, it took 7 years to really help me to understand the true concept of leadership. Like Dr. Tyson, I was making my way up in the organization. I was a director without any formal education beyond high school. And at 38 years old, Kyle told me, essentially, you're going back to school. And I said, no, I'm not. And he said, yes, you are. And I said, no, I'm not. And this went on back and forth. I won't bore you with that. But essentially, that week, I signed up for college and had no idea what to expect. And so I have my degrees today because of a mentor and Kyle Price, who, like Dr. Tyson said, turned that mirror on me, saw things in me that I had no idea that I possessed. Those are still questionable, by the way. Maybe he just needed focal lenses or something, but whether or not that success it proves out or not, certainly will not be laid at the feet of Kyle Price, but certainly saw things in me that I didn't see in myself. And I tell Kyle when I'm able to talk to him still today, if you need anything from me, if you need a kidney, I'll be on the operating table tomorrow. I owe my life to that guy and many others since then, but that was my first experience. So if to those young careerists on the call, if you don't have a mentor and you feel awkward about approaching someone about it, essentially I just called and I said, bro, you don't know who I am. I've been watching you. I'm not a stalker or anything, but I've observed. I want to be what you are, and I want you to teach me how to do that. And he did. And for the next 7 years, I always told him, I walk in your door for mentoring and I crawl out under it, because you just broke me down. And when I talk about being honest with your mentees as a mentor, or accepting that honest feedback as a mentee, I mean that. Be willing to change anything, because the beauty of having a mentor is they help you to recognize your blind spots. They help you to see the things in you that you don't see in yourself. And if you're honest enough with yourself to allow them to help mold you, you'll have a much better mentoring experience. And I owe everything that I am today to that guy and many others beyond him. But that was my first experience. I know that was a little lengthy. I apologize.
That's great.
No, yeah, I mean, that's super great advice and very, very inspiring. So I appreciate everybody's responses on that. This next question goes out to Trudy, Dr. Shahani, and Charles. How important is relationship building to the practice of mentorship? And I think that's a very good segue from what was just discussed.
I can start. I think relationship building is critical, and it's not just build a relationship with your mentee like you want to be best friends. That's not what you really are trying to attain. You really want to have a relationship where you're sharing both the mentee's needs as well as your strengths and your weaknesses. I think that that's being transparent about what you can and can't lead them through is really important. Outlining what their goals are, and a relationship where you are secure as the mentor to give credit, to recognize publicly, and to allow them those opportunities to grow. We had a lovely conversation with the panel last week about allowing them to fail, which is not my strong suit, because I'm always like kind of the mother hen. I don't like my folks to fail, so I tend to protect a little bit. And I think some of the other panelists will give you better advice on how to allow the folks to fail in a constructive and protective way. But I think the relationship, professional understanding, is going to be critical to the success of both the mentor and the mentee.
Definitely, Trudy. I'll echo those comments, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. What it really comes down to, everyone, is trust, right? Ultimately, people love, and trust are people that you're going to actually listen to and confide in and rely on to give you sound advice. And now I think Kevin mentioned earlier how he reached out to someone that he didn't really know because he observed behaviors that he was interested in incorporating in his own life. And so that is a great way to start. But over time, if your mentor-mentee relationship is good, as he also alluded to, that you grow to know, love, and trust one another. And those relationships grow, and those are bonds forever. I mentioned earlier about Gary. Gary and he has been my mentor for about 30 years. And he's walked with me through so much of a life. And so relationship is key. And what aspect of relationship? It comes down to trust. And I do believe you got to let them fall down and hurt themselves sometimes. You really, a lot of times people, you have to remember that no one really gets better when everything is perfect. You really get better when you have to overcome something, or you have to research something, look something up, try something new. Everything that exists around us today in terms of modern conveniences are here because someone reached a point of failure and or discontent and wanted to overcome it by creating something new.
Now, I'm a psychiatrist. I really value relationships, obviously. So, relationship is important for any human connection, and so it is for mentorship too. If you ask me what mentorship is, I think mentorship is God giving you a chance to choose your professional parents. A few things that really matter in mentorship is trust, love, respect, but also clear boundaries. Just like we set boundaries with our kids that, this is okay, but this is not professionally okay. That's something that's really important in mentorship. So, just like we groom our kids, mentors groom their mentees. I think that's kind of what I think mentorship is.
This next question is for everybody. What are some pieces of advice that you would give to someone who wants to have a successful mentee-mentor relationship?
I'll go ahead with that one. One of the things I think that you have to remember is that healthy relationships grow, okay? And you may begin as a mentee and the mentor is bringing you up, and they can lead you to the point that they've arrived at. But beyond that, they can't lead you anymore because they haven't been that next step themselves, but they can encourage you to move forward. And I have been very fortunate to have long relationships on both the mentor and mentee side, and have been, fortunate to get the chance to grow myself and grow beyond a mentor, and then to have my mentees grow. And it's a wonderful process, but if you get stagnant in one place and there's no growth in the relationship, that's when you need to do some reassessment.
Let me just jump in here for a minute. One of the things that's so important for a protege to be aware of is they need to be an active partner. Because remember, your mentor is investing time into you and your career, and you show your appreciation by listening to their advice and asking thoughtful questions. Now, I know it's difficult sometimes for, people in the beginning to know what questions to ask, but just to throw some of those out there, you could simply start by asking, what advice would this mentor have for career planning and advancement? What factors do they weigh when thinking about their future? How do they balance their work and life? That's always a challenge for a lot of people. And who would you recommend that I could work with? I think that it's hard for some students to recognize at this stage of their life the importance of networking. Networking is something that should be with you just about throughout your life, whether it's social or whether it's for business. And network or not work is applicable regardless of what field of endeavor you're in. So I think it's important that people maintain those networks once they develop those. But I think that also they could ask the mentor, what kind of professional organizations should I be a part of? And in most cases, it's going to be in alignment with what field you've chosen, what direction you're going to take. One other thing is, be sure you engage in frequent communication with your mentor, because you can do this easily this day by emails, messages, phone calls, that sort of thing. But when we have such busy schedules, you want to try to get to the point, be as brief as you can, but provide the information you need. But I think above all is that the more transparent a protege is with the mentor, the more effective the mentor will be. So That's what I kind of thinking about right now.
Well, there are about three things that come to mind for me in terms of advice. Number one is to find a mentor to get started. If you don't have a mentor in your life, today's a good day to start. And that would be the number one thing. You know, the difference between people, most people that have a great mentor-mentee relationship and those that don't is the ones that do actually took the step to get one. Right. And so that would be one. And then the second would be what you want. Right. And so if you want a good mentor relationship, mentor-mentee relationship, become a mentor yourself. That's a good mentor to a mentee. And we always encourage everyone that we work with to find a strong second, meaning someone that you can pour into and experience this mentor-mentee relationship. And then lastly, I would say grace. Right, Don Gibson alluded to the fact that this sort of relationship takes time and everyone's time is valuable. But having said that, we know that we're all busy. And so to give one another grace in this space or in this relationship is very important. Either it's when you start talking about aspects of accountability, say, hey, last time we met together, you said you were going to do this or that. Well, if the mentor is so rigid that they have no flexibility for things that come up, well, then that wouldn't be an effective relationship. And at the same time, if they're not stern enough to be able to hold the mentee accountable or to have them hold one another accountable, well, that's also not effective. But I believe that giving one another grace within the context of mentor-mentee relationships is important, and especially in the beginning phases when you're coming to learn one another and know more about one another, then grace is very important. So getting started, becoming a mentor yourself, and also allowing grace within that relationship.
Hello, my name is Blair Basham. I work as an HR lead at Legacy Community Health, so I would definitely be considered a mentee for sure. I've been working with my mentor for maybe about 4 years now. He is the one who told me to join this organization, so very happy for that. But I would say when I turned 20 years old, I asked all my family and friends for my birthday, some advice that they would give themselves at the age of 20. And one that really stuck with me was that people are willing to speak with you a lot more than you think. And a lot of people in these higher positions want to connect with me. And so that was very interesting. And from that point on, I decided to kind of work the network that I already had to find mentors for me. And so I think that is one thing that I'll take away. One, people are really willing to speak with you. And then also that, to leverage the network you already have. Maybe you have family, maybe you have old coworkers that may know somebody that is, somebody who can make a really huge impact in your life. So sometimes it's a little bit hard to go talk to a stranger on LinkedIn and maybe they might not message you back. That may be a little bit harder, but it took one connection that led to another, that ended up creating this relationship. So I'm very happy that worked out for me. And I think that's a good way to kind of ease your way in.
Makes such good points. I also feel like sometimes being a mentor is kind of like being a social worker, except with more boundaries. Being able to know those resources, reaching out, knowing how you can help somebody as far as pointing them in the right direction. That's one of the things that Dr. Rodney Cooper here in the BAT program at BC College has also taught me. My family's home of 42 years burned down earlier in the year, well, right before summer semester started, and he was able to help me overcome those things so that way I could be successful that semester and move forward. So sometimes it really just does take knowing resources as well, even though you are not a counselor or a social worker.
And I don't have too much advice to give, simply because advice usually requires wisdom. And my esteemed colleagues have already shared great wisdom, and I appreciate them for doing so. I would simply say, along the lines of what's already been said, and Blair brought up some great points. Most of us understand, those of us who are further along in our career, understand that we did not get here alone. And so we are always happy to, and even thrilled and honored in many cases. I always consider it an honor when someone asks me to mentor them, because I recognize that I would not be the person that I am without the help of so many people, not just those that I mentioned, but so many people in my life have helped me, groomed me, to help me to become who I am. And I want to give back. And I feel like most people who are further along in their career feel that way. So as a mentee, my advice to you would be the same advice that Charles said earlier. Get started, reach out, ask people, don't feel that awkwardness approach. The worst they can say is no. And then Don Gibson also talked about, and some others have talked about, networking and getting involved in. The more people you know, the more opportunities you have to learn from others, the more well-rounded you're going to be as an individual and in your career. So reach out. And as a mentor, the only thought that I would have is understand what you have to give when you're mentoring, because a lot of times we try to be too many things to too many people, and maybe we don't possess that skill set. Knowing who you are, being comfortable with who you are as a mentor is going to be very beneficial. Don't overstretch your bounds. It doesn't mean don't try to grow. I'm not saying that, but understanding what you bring to the table and what you bring to help other people's lives is very important, so that you both get the maximum benefit from the opportunities that you have to spend time together.
If I could add just to Kevin's thing, also be very aware as the mentor, not to try to recreate yourself, right? In this relationship, you certainly want to offer advice and support and certainly words of wisdom when you have years ahead of them. But not everybody needs to be you, and not everybody should be, right? You're unique and they're unique. And so just a little bit of advice is, don't create your mini-me's, right? Try to be understanding that they're unique and help them to grow in their own unique way.
Yeah, that's so awesome, Trudy. I appreciate that comment so much. And I wanted to also piggyback on what Kevin said, earlier. And so now I said I'm going to piggyback on it. Now I forgot what I was going to say. So never mind. Never mind. I got it now. We talked about before last week that this idea and remembering that everything that you have in your head and every experience and capability you have came from somewhere. There's not a single person on this call or that exists in the world that did not have someone teach them something. And so if that is true, well, then is it also true that it is your moral obligation to pay forward your knowledge and capability to someone else? Or is it okay to just take it to the grave? And we think it's not okay to just take it to the grave. It's your moral obligation to pay things forward. And so this whole mentor-mentee relationship should be a part of your life at some point, regardless of whether or not you seek a mentor or become one or both.
If I could add one more thing that I think helped my relationship with my mentor is there are ways that you can pour into your mentor as well. If they have a fundraiser that they're doing and you want to throw $10 at it, if you share any of their information, if you buy them a birthday gift, there are other ways that you can still, create a bond and relationship with them. So they might not feel like you're just kind of taking too much. Just in my opinion, I think it's a relationship regardless. And I think, it's kind of our job in a way to make sure that it's kind of going both ways and still supporting each other in anything that we can, I guess.
Dr. Shahani, did you have anything to add?
Not major. Our colleagues here have mentioned a lot, but the one more thing that I want to add is when you begin a relationship, I think begin it with the theme of a true mentorship where, I want to learn something out of this relationship. I want to grow within this relationship. Sometimes a lot of our mentees use mentorship as a primary employment tool, and that sometimes goes against the theme of mentorship. If that mentorship opportunity results in a future employment opportunity, well enough, but don't get into that relationship with the employment focus in your mind. I think that just kind of, doesn't rhyme well with your mentorship. Let your mentor shape you, let your mentor help you grow. And if your mentor then thinks that, hey, why don't I have this person work under our organization? Well and good, but don't use it as a primary employment tool.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Next question is for Don Wagner, Dr. Tyson, and Kevin. What steps do you take to maintain and strengthen your relationships with your mentor or mentee?
Well, if I don't, Don Wagner here, if I don't hear from them in a reasonable time, I just check in to say, how's it going, or some such thing, something to keep the dialogue alive. I had mentioned earlier the importance of understanding each role, and would choose that time to reinforce the fact that are you ready to move on to the next step? Did you take action on the things we discussed? What kind of progress have you had? But don't just let it go away. The stimulation provides two things in my view. First off, and most importantly, it shows a continued interest in the mentee by the mentor, that they aren't just a passing fancy, but that you truly are interested in what they want to discuss, what their aspirations are, and you want to be supportive. But number two, it's their job to drive the agenda. So I would leave it at that.
Dr. Tyson, any thoughts?
I would have to say that one of the things that I do is that I'm very serious about making time for my mentees. So when they reach out, I immediately figure out how I can adjust my schedule to make time for them. And then piggybacking on something that Dawn said is that, yes, if I haven't heard from them in a reasonable amount of time, I go looking for them. And I will have to say that another thing that I think is really important about strengthening these relationships is that I don't just share with them my successes. I also share with them my failures, so that they know that you can fail and still keep moving forward. That failure is not really a step back. It's just a way to do things better the next time. And I guess I want to wrap it up by saying that I am always very sure to make sure that I speak to them and reinforce specifically those things that are really great about them and about what they bring to the table. Because at the end of the day, in any type of leadership position, you will get a whole lot more criticism than you ever will pats on the back. And so I just think it's important that you're always leaving your mentee with this picture of the great things that they bring to the table and the promise of everything they can do as they bring those things to the table.
And I would agree with everything that has been said so far, said so eloquently. I'd like to just take it from a different perspective. That's what's been said so far has been from the mentor to the mentee. And there's nothing I can add. Those are great points. And I try to practice all of them, not always successfully, but these are fundamentals that as a mentor, you should practice with your mentee. But as a mentee to your mentor, the way that I try to keep that relationship alive is something that Don Gibson has alluded to a couple of times now, is the mentor is giving of their time. They are pouring themselves into you. And being grateful is the least I can do as a mentee. There are times when I reach out to the people who have been a mentor in my life, and as awkward as it is to interrupt their day, I just want to let you know how grateful I am for the difference that you've made in my life. Never forgetting who's helped you as a mentee is incredibly important, and making sure that they understand what a difference they've made in your life not only helps them to develop a relationship with you, but gives them the strength to continue to pour. Because as you know, people say, people may think mentoring is easy, but when you do mentoring correctly, you pour a lot of time, effort, energy, emotion into people that you don't know whether they're going to take that and do anything with it. You don't know what that advice is going to turn into one day. But what keeps you going and what can help keep you going is when someone speaks up and says, you made a tremendous difference in my life, and I just want to say thank you. And I think that's very important as a mentee to your mentors to keep that relationship going, is to remember to say thank you occasionally, so that not only keeps your relationship alive, but it gives them the fuel to pour more into other people. Even if you're not mentoring with them and not an active mentoring relationship with them today, it's okay just to reach out and remind them of the great things that their giving of themselves has done for you, so that they have the strength to do that for others, because that's what it's all about. We're all in this together. We're all helping and learning from one another.
Yeah, that's a really great point, and a very great kind of reminder for everybody here is to, kind of acknowledge that, yes, mentors get a lot of really great satisfaction out of what they do for their mentees, but, also hearing from their mentees, thank you, you are making a difference and you are impacting in a positive way. That just allows for the mentor to have that reassurance that they're making a really great difference in at least one person's life. So that's a very great point. This next question is for Dr. Shahani and Charles. How do you prepare for meetings with your mentor as a mentee?
I think time is very valuable both for the mentor and mentee. So being prepared is really important. The one way we could do is like set agenda. So when a mentee comes to the mentor, sending them a set agenda saying that, hey, these are the things I would like to discuss with you today. That way, even the mentor knows what to expect from the meeting. Sometimes just having a list that, here's my next 3 to 6 month goal, that these are things that I would like to achieve in our mentorship process over the next 6 months, and letting your mentor sometimes drive the agenda could be another option. But respecting each other's time, being prepared for your meeting, and kind of setting those clear boundaries could be something that the mentee could help the mentor with.
And Bianca, could you give me that question one more time, please?
Sure. So the question was, how do you prepare for meetings with your mentor as a mentee?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. I prepare for my mentor mentee meetings very similar to coaching sessions. And we had this discussion last week. I happen to generally start off with the GROW model, which talks about goals and the reality and the opportunities and what you will do in the context of my mentor-mentee relationships and meetings. And so that's by establishing that framework is the best way to kind of prepare for it. And then another thing I would say is also clearing my mind and clearing all the distractions prior to a meeting, making sure my phone's off, I'm not looking at emails, I'm not doing anything. I really am giving my mentee my undivided attention for that period of time. And I also ask that they do the same thing. That they do the same and take the same approach, and making sure they have no distractions and they're able to really focus on what they're doing. And then lastly, I would say about meeting structure, again, I try to go through a similar format every single time. And so it's very familiar and comfortable for them. And generally I start by, hey, tell me something good going on in your life professionally and something good going on personally. Right. And that just kind of gets the meeting going. And so all of that has to do with kind of structure and preparation for those meetings.
For Trudy and Don Gibson, how do you prepare for meetings with your mentee as a mentor?
Well, as a mentor, I would meet with my mentee ahead of a meeting, and really, I would go through several things. First of all, I'd go through who are the participants in that meeting, so that they understand both the political, social aspects of what they're walking into, right? You don't again want to set them up for something that they don't see coming. And I'll give credit to those who are willing to set them up, but I don't. And then also just really going through that agenda, not just the agenda for that meeting, but what's the expectation moving forward for this particular project or committee or whatever it may be that you're working with them. And listening to their thoughts as well. So I think one of the things that, I always try to be very conscious of is not to direct them as much as to help them. It's a fine line because we're used to being bosses. If you're mentors, you're generally a boss of somebody, right? So it's a fine line with when you're actually mentoring them versus they're working for you, right? So just kind of understanding your own perspective on that and being really kind of thoughtful about how you plan for those meetings.
Well, my experience is that starting with the very first meeting with the mentee, that I want to make sure that we leave enough time at the end of the meeting to set up a schedule together of what we're going to talk about. And that may include things like what recent accomplishments they've had since our previous meeting. What are some of the biggest challenges they're currently facing? Also, want to spend some time brainstorming with them in terms of how I, as a mentor, can help them. But it's really important that we have a schedule and that we try to stay with it, but we also have flexibility in that if between the time we last meet, they come up with something else before the next meeting, to add that to the list and be sure to send me a copy. So we are well formed, and the most important thing is utilize our time well, because I respect everybody's time regardless of what position they're in. And I think that has to be a mutual understanding, but that's some of the things I do. I also am very good about helping the mentee work on their objectives and their milestones that we want to accomplish. And also I tend to follow through and follow up what I expect from the protege. It's not that I'm big on making assignments. Usually that's left in the coaching arena more than it is with mentees, but to give them things that they can be thinking about, because I want them to be thoughtful when they come to each meeting. And the more I hear from them, the more I can help them, because I'll have a better understanding of what their needs are. So that's kind of my routine.
This is for everybody. What has been your toughest moment as a mentor? What has been your toughest moment as a mentee? And how did you persevere and overcome those tough moments?
I think one of the toughest things is that you have to let them hold the pen themselves. You can't do everything for them. They have to be willing to do the work. And it's also hard as a mentee to not let somebody take that stress away from you sometimes.
I'll jump in on this one. My toughest moment as a mentor was having to tell a mentee that this is not the right relationship. What they were coming to me for was not what I was able to give, and it wasn't working. And that's tough. It's not only tough to have to say those words to someone else, but it's also tough as a mentor to admit that you're not the right person for this, because to Trudy's point, we're all bosses, and bosses typically are type A personalities, and we typically are those kind of people who believe that you give me the right time, resources, and support, and we can accomplish anything. To have to say to someone that I'm not the right mentor for you was one of the toughest moments that I've dealt with as a mentor. I would say as a mentee, the toughest moments that I've dealt with are all of them. And the reason for that is being in a mentoring relationship, I want my mentor to be brutally honest with me, and I demand that of my mentors. Don't let me fool myself into thinking that I am something that I am not. Don't allow me to continue down the road of complacency. Beat the living crap out of me if that's what you have to do to get me to where I want to go so that I achieve my goals. And as a result, I have had many moments where I heard things that I didn't want to hear and wasn't at the moment a big enough person to stand up and face up to that, having heard that, you know. And hence when I said earlier, I crawl out underneath the door of my mentor many times after I leave, because I've got to go back and process. But those moments, as tough as they are, to hear the truth about yourself and to fully embrace the change that needs to happen. You know, Marshall Goldsmith wrote a book called "What Got You Here Won't Get You There," and I truly believe that. And that's a powerful book. If you haven't read it, please go read it. He's not paying me to say that, but maybe he and I should talk about that. But anyway, it's a powerful book, because the reality is what got me to this point in my career is not what's going to get me to the next point in my career. And so I can't continue to do the same things and expect a different result. So it takes me being big enough as a mentee to go back, process what I've been told, implement those changes in my life, and move forward.
Yeah, I would like to echo what Kevin has said, because I really identify with that. I actually always went for those folks who I considered to be the toughest people around, and it definitely paid off. And I actually took pride at, like you're talking about, Kevin, taking those beatings and turning them into something. So I think that was very well said. As far as my toughest moment as a mentor was when I actually was in a situation where I was between my mentor and my mentee. It was a situation where, when I was talking about growth, I had outgrown my mentor at that time in terms of position. And I had a mentee that worked under me, like Trudy was saying. Just because somebody works for you doesn't mean they're your mentee, but sometimes those people that work for you are your mentees. And this particular person was a mentee and still is to this day, and he's in his own executive position now. But anyway, this situation happened, like I was saying. I chose those folks who were the toughest, and this particular person had a reputation for going beyond being tough to being inappropriate sometimes in terms of public berating and that kind of thing. And I was in a situation where this person, and I can't even begin to describe to you how severe it was, did a public berating of somebody who worked under me and was my mentee. And that was a really tough moment, because I, at that time, felt more responsibility to my mentee than in my mentee position. And so I had to have a meeting with this particular person and had to say and tell this person, you will never do this to someone who works under me again. It cannot happen again. And I had to put my foot down, and it did end up severing the relationship, as I expected it would. So it was a loss, a definite loss for me. But I will say that for my mentee, it ended up being a win. As he has, I think if you asked him today, he would say was probably one of the most horrible situations he experienced in his career. But he did grow from it. He has gone on to be a wonderful executive and mentor himself to this day. But I would have to say that was my most difficult time.
I'll kind of echo what our two previous speakers just said, I think saying no in any relationship is tough, be it personal, be it a professional mentorship, and be it a mentor or mentee. I think if your professional goals or professional expectations are not aligned, saying no and kind of, in some ways either terminating that relationship or realigning the expectations from that relationship is tough, but really important for a healthy mentor-mentee relationship.
Well, I'll jump in. The most difficult mentor related experience that I had was when I was working for a large Houston area school system, and actually was mentoring a young man that was in junior high and about to enter high school. And it ended up that I took a position in the Dallas area. And I think he was pretty upset by that. And because of that, his feelings about the matter, well, then he stopped reaching out or accepting communication from me. So flash forward 10 years later, when I move back to the Houston area, I apologize. That's my phone. Sorry. And I moved back to the Houston area after 10 years, and I was actually watching television, and it just so happens that I saw his picture on the news. It was a mugshot.
Oh.
And that was heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking for me. And so I'll never forget that, obviously. But as from a mentee perspective, like many other people, probably my worst experiences have been when a mentor was given to me and not sought after by me, right? And so just again, as a note of caution, mentor-mentee programs rarely work if they're steeped in assigning people to be mentors of other people. It goes back to the whole relationship discussion that we had earlier. It really comes down to people love, and trust. And it takes a little bit longer for a mentor-mentee or a mentor program to work out, but you have to continue to encourage people to get out and find someone that they can connect with inside or outside of the organization as a way to make sure that your program is effective.
Well, I think also that all of us as mentors recognize that the mentoring relationship has its share of highs and lows. And as a mentor in early stages of my career, I learned that I can sometimes underestimate my impact because proteges do not always communicate well. And typically, young people are still learning to express themselves. And some proteges forget to say thank you, and many struggle to open up and share. And when I began mentoring, what I didn't realize is it doesn't matter if your protege opens up to you. What really matters is whether your protege knows he or she can open up. And sometimes the protege isn't ready to talk, but feels really good knowing the mentor is there for him or her if needed. And so I kind of persevered and overcame those moments by first identifying the problem and then addressing it. So for example, if I thought my progress was slow in regards to the issue, I needed to assess whether my personal goals for that relationship were in the right direction and make sure they are realistic. Also, I strive to talk about any issues with a protege in a caring way. I think you have to really show that you mean what you say and give your proteges your undivided attention. You can't be looking at your watch. You can't be looking at phone calls that come in or whatever. No offense, Kevin, but it's important for me to model healthy communication and other behaviors that I want to encourage, which is another way for me to teach important life skills.
I would add that it's also, there are times that you will fail as a mentor, and you will have done everything possible to help someone through their career. And I think personally of a person in particular that I mentored through education and opportunity, who worked for me and eventually worked his way up through the ranks. And then at the time they got there, they forgot where they came from. And a little too big for their britches at the time, and felt empowered at that point to, you know, make decisions without clarifying and checking. And it really was catastrophic for them as a young leader. So, and for me personally, to have brought them up and to see them fail at the end was, you know, was horrible. So I do think, though, we're all human, and just recognize that there will be times as a mentor you might fail, and you know, you don't let that stop you, and don't let that stop you from helping the next one up, because that's the right thing to do. And Dr. Tyson, to your point in your story, I just want to say bravo, because there is never the right time to publicly berate somebody in a meeting. It is never acceptable. As leaders, we always know there's an opportunity later to help correct, but when you take the opportunity to publicly bring someone down, I think it's never acceptable. And bravo to you for standing up to them, and anyone else who's mentoring and leading. I think that is just a basic rule.
Mr. Wagner, did you have anything to add?
No, I think it's all been covered. I could use different words, but not make a different point.
All right, thank you all. For my last question, before we open it up to the questions of our audience, how has mentorship been useful in your career? We'll go ahead and start with Don Gibson.
Well, I found it to be a very productive way to connect with colleagues and peers who both inspire and challenge growth and improvement within myself as well as within others.
I reflect, Don Wagner again, I reflect on the many, many stages of mentoring, even before I knew the term or the concept. Beginning as a young guy in the YMCA, we spoke about this last week. The adult leadership in the YMCA for me when I was 7, 8, 9, etc. And then going into college, I recall another very significant involvement where I was about to fail academically, and the person with whom I was working for my work-study scholarship took me under his wing, made me come to his home, sit in one of his empty bedrooms and study and get out of the dormitory environment. When I entered the Air Force in one field, which for various reasons, which I won't belabor, went away, I had another mentor pop up urging me for a change in careers, which has already been addressed, I think, by Kevin earlier. How these things happen. The doors close and doors open, even though the label might not be there. And I think being blessed with those opportunities and then having the guidance of the Lord to follow them and find the open door in spite of the one that's been closed just has been very pertinent to me in my development in several different settings, as I've just described. So to wrap that all up, I would say stay alert to those opportunities. If somebody doesn't appear on the horizon automatically, begin to think who you might use. We've talked about this over and over again. Mentorship is absolutely essential, and everybody should be thinking about that regardless of their walk of life.
I'll go next. I think mentorship has been really essential for me in kind of identifying opportunities I should pursue, but also identify opportunities that I should not pursue. So kind of, using your mentor sometimes as a person you can kind of bounce your career advancement ideas with, asking them if this is a good opportunity, but at the same time, if they say no, I don't think so, this is a great opportunity for you, hold on a bit, great opportunities are yet to come for you. Using that advice wisely, because there might be a theme to it or purpose to it. I think hearing those has been really essential for me.
I think a couple of weeks ago, I think it was Megan Guerrero that posted something about this panel. And I responded to that post with a statement that said, finding, sustaining, and becoming a mentor just may be the secret sauce to your career. And when it comes down to it, and I think several of the panelists today have talked about this, no one gets anywhere alone. Right. And if you really can have an intentional relationship with people that is geared toward mentoring and mentorship, well, then that's even so much better. Right. So by happenstance, you're going to get help from people. But if you're intentional about it in a mentor-mentee relationship, well, then it takes it even to another level. And so I always say that it's better to have the best 1% of 100 people than it is to have 100% of you. So if you can go around, walk around and talk around to people and get their best nuggets of knowledge, well, then it will be better for you in the long and short run.
Dr. Tyson, did you want to add anything?
Oh, sorry, I was just coughing, but there is one thing I would like to say for all you early careerists out there. And I say this coming from having taught a particular course in our Master's in Healthcare Administration program at the end of the course called Portfolio. And one of the activities that we have them do is to build a mentorship panel, if you will. And time again, what I see students doing is putting names of friends and family members on that list. And the thing that I would encourage you to do is not to put family members and close friends on that list, because their role in your life is different in a lot of ways. You know, your close friends and family, they know you well. They have their own agenda, which is typically to be supportive and make you happy and what have you. But what you need is somebody that can view you objectively, that has actually walked your path before, because it's not likely that your friends and family have walked the exact same path as you. Well, actually, nobody has done the exact same path, but you really need those objective voices in your life.
And I would say that, you know, Dr. Tyson, it's amazing how interconnected our thoughts are on this panel. I apologize for stealing all of your thoughts, but you know, not everybody walks that same path. You know, you see people on this call who out of high school went into college, got their degrees, worked their way up through the executive leadership roles, and their path was very straightforward. Myself, that was not my path. You know, I started my career in healthcare as a security guard. Mentoring plays such a tremendous role in my life by holding up that mirror and saying, there's more to you than what you see, because that's all I saw in me. And a mentor said to me, no, there's more, do this. There's more here, go there. And following that and allowing people to help shape me and mold me into a leader and into the positions that I've been privileged to hold in my career, you know, is important. So it doesn't matter where you come from or how you started this path or this journey. A mentor can help you to guide you to your best version of yourself, whatever that is. Not everybody's going to be a CEO. Not everybody's going to be a president or a vice president. I will never hold those titles likely in my career, and I'm comfortable with that, right? But finding the best version of yourself is what's important, not what title you hold, not what position you attain, but finding the best version of yourself can be found in, like Charles said, that 1% of 100 people, allowing others to pour into you. And then in turn, once you have all of that you need and are still gathering that, begin pouring that back into others, allows this community of people to make each of us the best versions of ourselves. And I've certainly found that to be true in my career.
Purity, did you have anything to add?
I could add more of the same that everybody has talked about so far. I think it's just knowing where you came from and where you're going.
For sure. And as Harold kind of said in the chat, it does take a village. There's different mentors for different aspects of your life. And so having multiple various mentors is really valuable. I appreciate everybody's time here today, especially the panelists for giving their insight and experiences of what they have seen to be successful mentorships. We talked here today about how a mentee should be an active participant that is well prepped for a meeting and respectful for not only the time of themselves, but also their mentor. Having multiple mentors for different facets of your life is really important, as well as being open, honest, and really trusting in, that mentee-mentor relationship to really recognize those blind spots and then as a result help people grow. And also having crucial conversations with mentors is never easy, and it can come with a lot of heartache, heartbreak, and even tears, but having those will really help you grow. If anybody else has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or shout them out. And here I will kind of put in a shameless plug about the fact that ACHE-SETC also has their own mentorship program. And so if you are interested in having a mentor-mentee relationship, definitely sign up for that. And Mark has graciously put in a link that you can kind of learn more about it. So thank you all. And please feel free to either shout out or kind of type in your questions for the panelists.
Yeah, I have a question for, I guess, all the panelists. What's the most impactful advice that you have received from your mentor, your main mentor, I'd say?
I'll jump in. A very well-known healthcare executive who has, for some reason, taken an interest in mentoring me, and I'll never understand why. Rod Brace, many of you probably know him, once told me probably the most impactful thing as a leader that I've ever heard, and it took me about 2 years to fully wrap my mind around it. I'm kind of slow. But he said to me, Kevin, if you're ever frustrated with your team, it's your fault. And I thought, that can't possibly be true. I'm surrounded by idiots, and it has to be their fault. And so it took me about 2 years to fully understand what that meant. But what it meant to me was either you haven't laid out the vision appropriately, or you haven't given them the resources or support that they need, or you haven't held them accountable appropriately. If you're frustrated with your team, it's your fault. And that made such a tremendous difference in how I lead teams today versus how I led teams before. I always approached it as if I knew what I was doing, they just didn't get it. Now I understand that it's my responsibility as a leader to ensure that every person is on the same page. And if they're not, it's my fault. And that's been the most impactful advice that I've ever been given. I didn't like it, for sure. I still don't like it many times. But it has proven true, and I'm so grateful to Rod for giving me that.
I'll follow up on that. I'm going to go back to the mentor I told you about from over 30 years ago that saw me as an educated person. He made a statement to me, knowing kind of who I am and what I'm about. When I left Exxon then to go back and get my graduate degree full-time, he said to me, Sandy, I want you to go, and I want you to get your degree, and I don't want you to worry about rearranging things while you're there. And that he was speaking to the fact that I'm always about improving and making and growing and building and all of these things. And he was right in his advice, because the whole point of that is to not lose focus on what you're there for and what you're supposed to be achieving, because you can get distracted by a lot of things. Because there's always going to be things that you could go off and do and build and make and improve and whatever. But to be successful, you have to know what you're there for, what you're about, and to keep your focus. And that was a piece of advice that has served me well throughout.
I think for me, one of my mentors recently told me that, if you want to be a successful professional, you need to collect everyone's lemons and make lemonade out of them. Our jobs as professionals is not highlighting problems, but our job as professionals is to have that problem solving skill there. We can only progress in life as leaders if we develop that problem solving skills. So we need to be, better in making those smoothies out of our lemonades. And I think that's the best advice that someone gave me.
I'll make a couple of statements. One is a process that I led an organization through once, and that was to find someone from another generation and ask them what the most impactful book was that they've ever read. And in that, I did the same process. I was leading the organization, but I went through it as well. And a gentleman gave me his officer training manual from the 60s. And he had it highlighted and had his notes in there and all that. And so that was a great experience. But I will say, in terms of advice from a mentor, sometimes the greatest value of a mentor-mentee relationship is presence and inquiry, meaning just being available and being there and asking great questions. And so it was in this context that the greatest impact or the greatest value came to me from my mentor, Gary. We were walking along a boardwalk near some water, and he said something to me. He goes, "Charles, I have a regret in my life." And I was like, what? You see, Gary has done everything right. I mean, he's got a picture perfect career, education, retired at 55. He was a partner in Conoco. So if that tells you any idea of his success. And I said, if you've got regrets, Gary, I'm in real trouble, right? But what he said his regret was what has happened to the world on his watch. And that shook me. And so the reason why I'm telling you that, the great value that came out of that statement was, today's a good day to get started on having a positive impact on the world. I took that as pure motivation and inspiration to get out and do stuff. So just him walking with me and just talking to me about what his thoughts were was of the greatest value to me. And it's just one moment that stands out in my mind.
The best advice I ever had was from a graduate professor in biology. She was very instrumental in helping me prepare for my thesis. And I was scared to death of making a presentation to a distinguished group of the thesis review panel. And her advice was, she said, never be intimidated by those that you think have more knowledge than you do. And her point was that she said, look, she said, you know more about your research than they do because your research is new. There's not a whole lot of references on it, so they're not going to know as much as you. So therefore, you should be confident that you're going to do well. And sure enough, I mean, I actually got a standing ovation from the review panel because of my presentation, but I'll never forget that. I mean, I was scared to death when I first went in there until she took me aside and said, look, calm down. It's not as bad as you think it is. So, it's important that you not feel intimidated by people that you think are more knowledgeable than you are. I mean, they may look like that, but that doesn't mean the way they are. Okay. So.
I want to follow up, Dawn, on that. And in saying that, I was asked once I finished my PhD, what I learned. And my answer to that question is I learned how much I don't know. And that's what you learn in the PhD program.
It's true.
Thank
think
you,
we have-
guys.
Yes, thank you. I think we've had a really profound discussion here today, and I personally gained a lot from it. So I'm very appreciative of everybody sticking till the end, and I'm very, very appreciative of all of our panelists that have given all their knowledge and expertise today. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Bianca, for facilitating.
Of
You did a
course,
great job.
I appreciate it.
All right.
I appreciate it, everyone.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
All
family.
right,
Thank you.
everyone have a good day.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.